The target we've got on our carbon farming is 20 mils compressed of litter over the whole landscape with moderate decomposition, because then you get that stability of temperature and things like that. There's a guy down near us, and he has one of those, what is it? It's like an infrared temperature measure that the plumbers use for air conditioners and things like that. And he does that on the ground, and it's like 20 degrees difference in summer, if not more, between bare ground and where the litter is. It's linked to production and things like that, so you're right, it is easier to get 20 mils of compressed litter at southern Tassie or you know, forest in the Otways than it is sort of anywhere else. But you know, what we're seeing is that you're growing a lot of material in these environments that just needs to be on the ground. So, and if not, it'll oxidise and the carbon goes up into the air. Overwhelmingly, the biggest impact on animal health is the age of the grass. If the grass is too young, it's there's some people that say soluble protein, but I say non-protein nitrogen. It's too high in that. There's an article in this on sort of milk urea nitrogen, and it's all about when we feed them. That perennial ryegrass in southern Victoria has got 30% crude protein, so it's just got 30% nitrogen measured in it, and it scours the guts out of the animals. So you need both. You need the litter decomposing, fueling the nutrient cycling, but you also need to control the age of the grasses that you're feeding the animals. When the grasses are recovered, there is also when you're getting less non-protein nitrogen, so you won't get those metabolic diseases and things like that. So that whole process of giving calves scours and is giving cows young grass, which then forms a lot of ammonia in the rumen, which then goes across into the bloodstream, and the animal then ends up filtering it out through urine and milk, and then it goes into the milk, which then changes the pH of the rumen in the calf, which then sets up the conditions for the E. coli, which then they you know, die from pneumonia because they've got reduced immunity from the scours. So I say, if you're a vet, that was why I was looking at you, if you're a vet, you treat the scours or the pneumonia. If you're a farmer, you go back up here and give them grass that's the right age. And this whole article's about that high milk urea nitrogen that actually lowers the fertility of the cows. And he's a vet consultant down in southwest Victoria, and he's talking a lot about that now. How do we give them or handle that high non-soluble protein? So there's a real link between these two, and they marry up, but it's also to do with getting that soil functioning and the nutrient cycling. If they're scouring, they actually can't keep nutrients in them very well. So, you know, we've got lots of cases that all we do with the dairies is get the dung scores right. So make sure that they're a nice pie with a dip in the middle, and a lot of those animal health problems fix. And it's to do with that age of that grass. This is sort of in April, still dry, and this is one of the trial sites that we're doing with the Glenelg Copkin CMA. So it was pretty hard, pretty dry, not much going on. And this guy, Sean, was really impressed that it had all that happening even though he hadn't had any moisture under the litter. So yeah, there's a lot of, you know, if you've got litter there, you won't get germination, you won't, yeah, and things like that. And it was all happening, and it was happening on most of the sites. So it was about that management, and we're talking about, well, how many stock days did he graze it for, and sort of trying to get a feel for it. He's now expanding that. He knows how to do this in a small area. How does he do it on paddock scale? How does he do it on groups of paddocks? But making sure that he's increasing that. Weed control, this is at our place when we took over. It was one of the properties Timbercore bought, and it was cape weed and thistles and bare ground, and just using livestock, we put it back to grass and stuff like that. So it's about learning that as a base level skill in a trial area. It's much quicker the higher the rainfall. It takes sort of 12 months to get significant change where you have a season every year, but you need to be able to do this in your trial area so that you actually can know how many years it's going to cost you and how much work is involved in doing this.
Right, that's not 12 months though.
No, not at all. No.
How long did it take you to get it?
To there, it took about 6 years to do that. But do you know, I've got photos somewhere of, that was within 15 months sort of taking over. We were keeping the water clear running off our place. So it had gone significantly to litter and perennials in sort of that sort of 12 to 18 months. So it was making a big difference. But you know, it's a high rainfall area, it has good soils, it has good seasons, so it's different.
Did you do any pasture cropping with that?
No, just grazing.
Just grazing.
No seed, no fertiliser, just grazing. So I'm saying this is out here, this is Andrew and Megan Mosley, they're at Cobar, and they took about 10 years, because like it's about getting this, to do a broad acre sort of thing, which is very quick, I thought, for out at Cobar. And they did some pasture cropping and grazing and stuff like that. So I threw that one in because it's sort of probably harder than where you guys are, was what I was thinking. I was sort of trying to bracket it, so easier and harder. But that's sort of what you can do at doing that sort of management. So that's actually getting a lot of litter in it and stuff like that, but it's taken a lot of work. No, a lot of that is cotton panic, but a lot of it started with windmill, sort of through. They didn't graze off their oats all the way. They left sort of a thing, but you know, that was all like it was bare ground, like you know that red sort of stuff. And so they pasture cropped it with knife points, didn't kill anything. Then they grazed it off after it had dried off, and then they've been grazing within that. But you know, there's lags in the system, I think. You know, there's sort of getting the skills, there's getting the infrastructure, and there's getting the land starting to shift in the direction that you want. So it's, you know, like, and they sort of are doing a lot of that sort of stuff, but they're also doing other things. They're still pulling some country. They're still, you know, they're getting more and more, but they know how to do this and make money out of it. So it's that type of stuff about sort of, if we're sort of doing a good job of keeping the land covered and the decomposing litter, then the water should be coming off clear or clearer running off your place than it run on. So I say to people, the quickest, easiest way to work out is in a runoff event, go and get a jar from above your place and a jar from below and compare them. So that says more about your management than nearly anything else. So it's really quick. So weed control, again, this is like onion grass here, or as the South Australians call it, Western District ryegrass. And yeah, like I actually sort of had done this thing in my head that, you know, like this is all wallaby grass and microlina, and the natives aren't competitive enough at the autumn break to outcompete the onion grass. That was what I was telling myself. And what happened was, because I travel a lot, I don't get to do things properly, and these trees here had fallen over the fence, so I just ran a hot tape through here, and I grazed this and I left this. And since then it's been grazed. But as soon as I grazed it, I went, oh, you know, because all it did was get longer recovery. You can see that there's more litter in here. You can see, and it's like as if you've sprayed the onion grass out. You get onion grass, don't you? It's a bulby thing, so, you know, I would have thought you can't kill it with a stick. So, but it just, it's about creating the conditions. So we're doing a lot of work with serrated tussock, and African lovegrass, not so much on Chilean needle. And overwhelmingly, all we're doing is trying to create this competitive situation where we grow more grass rather than worry about, which is what Greg was saying, don't worry about the weed. The problem isn't that the weed's there, the problem is that there's not enough grass there. So how do you get that high functioning, high perennial so that there is no nutrients available and things like that? As those perennials change, they tend to lock up all the nitrate, nitrogen and things like that, and all the forbs and those type of plants fall out of the system. We've got soil tests that's showing that. We're looking at getting a PhD student to sort of write up that sort of how does that soil change, what's the cost of conversion. I'm trying to design things so that people isn't a cost to convert to different practices, but how do we do and use some of this information? So when we go outside, I really wanted to sort of make sure that we thought about where do we do these low-cost trials, how do we do enough of them. We just, if we've got paddocks, you know, when the animals are in there, we might push them into a corner. Some people are doing this, they just get the dogs to hold them in the corner for an hour or whatever and trample it, and I'll try and show what that needs to look like, and then they fence it off and do that again and repeat that. But you might have one at 6 months, what does it look like? One at 12 months, what does it look like? But you've eliminated lack of stock density. So you try and do it at very high stock density, yard stock density for just a short period of time, so that you can actually say, oh, okay, I know that that's about how long this is going to take to recover. What's going to happen here? So that you've got those areas in front of you to start to drag you along. I've been saying they're like the dashboard of grazing, so that you know, oh, this year it's closer to 12 months than it is to 6 months. You know, so if I need to leave that paddock for that, or you know, in Cobar, they're actually going out for 2 years as well, so that they know what that looks like. So does it, with that sort of impact, does it become perennial? Do you get your 30 perennial grasses in your decomposing litter? Because if you don't have this, and this is the evidence when I go to people's place, I say, show me. Show me that you know what it is. So, oh, I think it's 4 months, or I think it's 5 months, or I think it's whatever. They don't. They can go and show what happens there, and what happens, you know, there, on that aspect, on that soil type, so that you know what the answer is. You know that if there might be some reason why the perennials aren't coming back. But you've got that information within you. You could do it at different stock densities, or your stock densities, or whatever, if you wanted as well. But people can extrapolate from looking at that out into here quite quickly, I've found. You know, they get a great result. They go, okay, well, it's going to take longer because I'm at lower stock densities, lower animal impact. So therefore, yeah, but I know where I'm heading. And these become they drag people along in their thinking about how to manage the rest of that. And if it doesn't work, you might do it harder, or, you know, it's about diagnosing why. Why didn't that work? Because sometimes they go backwards, you know, but more often than not, you just repeat again and it'll start to go forwards. But if they've been capped or scolded or whatever for a long time, they take a bit of effort to get them started. So you're just getting that feel for, oh, okay, these are my boundaries. I want people to know what the boundaries are for recovery times. I'm not seeing people get out near those boundaries to know what's going on.
So is there a difference between cattle and sheep?
There is, and horses as well, surprisingly. I do a horse workshops in Tassie as well, but both, overwhelmingly I work with more sheep people, even though we have cattle at home. The thing with sheep is that they can pick up the litter easier than the cattle. So if you're doing these trials, you've got to make sure, see, this is down in Gippsland, Beng Warden. It's sort of not, it's like a bit of a rain shadow there south of the highway before Bairnsdale. And they took it from there to there with their, you know, 1,000 wethers in a little corner paddock. But they left it covered. You've got to make sure that the sheep don't stay in there and pick up all the litter, because we're actually trying to build that litter base. So they can take the green, but not the litter. And you can actually see them picking it up. And you can actually check, you know, was there litter here? Is it there after you've taken them out? So sheep can put it back to the Stone Age pretty well, you know, and horses can even go harder. But when I'm training the horse people, I just say to them, horses are like a really powerful chainsaw, you know. You can sculpt something beautiful with it, or you can cut your leg off. Most people use horses in the cut the leg off mode, I've been saying, because they just, if they're going to be harder, if they're going to be picking up litter, then you've got to take them off earlier. So it's about us. And when I'm doing the stiper talk, I just do that. I have members of stiper that can take bare ground and just using cattle, sheep, horses and goats, put it back to a native grassland. But I also have members of stiper that can take a native grassland and just using cattle, sheep, horses and goats, put it back to bare ground. It ain't the cattle, sheep, horses and goats. So we just need to allow for them, that they can pick it up. And they can survive sort of there for a bit longer as well. Do you know that if that soil's capped and sealed, you don't want to smash it all, because then if you get a rainfall event, you lose a lot. So we're actually and the look of the soil is like a twist, is what we're going for. When I go outside, it looks a bit like it's been bruised and twisted. And so that you're not smashing everything and opening up to erosion, because we want to increase and retain all that nutrient and seed and soil and carbon that we've already got in the soil there. So you just go that. So I don't see that sort of out Burke, Brewarrina and things like that on their scolds. They'll use cattle because they go, I don't get enough. But I think it might be that they can handle them easier as well. They're putting them behind a single hot wire rather than having to fence them more intensively with sheep. It's quite interesting. Do you know, when we took that sort of from Cape Weed to there, overwhelmingly when people came, they said, where did the seed come from? And I just, my standard answer, just to be annoying, is to say, if I grow thistles, you do not ask me where the seed come from. Why do you want to know? And what I'm trying to do with people is sort of say, if you do the wrong things on the land, we're quite happy that the soils and the wind and the birds are full of weed seed. But we're not quite happy if we do the right things that you'll have those good seeds as well. But when you look at the viable soil seed bank, there's a guy, Dr. Ian Lunt, that's done a lot of work. He was at Melbourne Uni, I think he's in New South Wales or Canberra now, and he's done a lot of work on what is in that viable soil seed bank, and it's just massive. And it's never, another woman, Elizabeth Lindsay from CSIRO, she makes the statement that what you see on the ground is never usually what's in the soil. What you see above ground is usually not what's the seeds in the soil. So it's about trying to germinate and initiate. But I'm not saying do this everywhere. I'm saying know how to do it so you can compare it to anything else you could do. One of the guys in that CMA project that we've been doing, he's a full-time cropper. He's got no time for this and stuff, but what he is after he's done this and got the function going and doing all that is he's going to use it to regenerate paddocks quicker. But he's also, because we've been talking about risk, he's going to talk about getting out of that paddock and start regenerating before it gets to break even rather than before it's starting to fail. So while the paddock's still going and performing okay, he's going to get out of it so that he doesn't have that loss on that paddock. So he's sort of, our rainfall's pretty, like a bit of a clock, so and he's a pretty good cropper. So he's saying, well, now I can see that it's tapering a bit, and he's going to put it back in and use sort of putting it back to perennials and then mobbing it and doing that sort of stuff to regenerate it. So, there's lots of ways of thinking and doing and stuff of how do you use these skills.